Hello, everybody, and welcome back to SportsGamer. A final belated Happy New Year to you all. Welcome back to the Wraparound. This is the show where we take a look at all the goings-on throughout the ECL and its 5 tiers as we get to talk about today not only the end of the regular season in all of those tiers, but of course, we get a little mini preview of the postseason to come. As always, there is a lot to talk about, so let's get down to business. Let us kick things off today by talking about the ECL's top tier. It is the Elite Division. Finishing at the top of the standings, of course, 28 games played this year as opposed to our typical 30 due to a DNF, of course, that we'll talk about shortly. But it is Parasite finishing atop the board as they were all season long. They held that top position over the course of the full season. They did miss out on a perfect penalty kill and lost out on the top face-off percentage at the end of the season. But what more can you say about this team? Vatu, 65 goals and 104 points while missing out on 2 extra games that he normally would have had. The fact that Nicky Dangles on 96 points wasn't the team leading scorer is absolutely unbelievable. Teemu, 64 points as a defenseman. Even Tombo's 47. We're going to take a look at the league leaders in points, and he is very much up there amongst defenders. And, of course, the goaltending as well. Nikke and Finsere, both above 80%. An unbelievable team this year. Parasite, our number 1 seed heading into the postseason. You had Totari moving up an extra position to snag that 2 seed heading into the playoffs as well. When you talk about their lineup this season and what they were able to accomplish, Pro Filipaki leading the way at 56 points and a team leading 29 goals on the season. You know, this is more of kind of, I don't want to say like the standard point totals you could expect to see for one of our top seeds in the playoffs, but it is certainly more likely than just the ridiculousness that Parasite were able to put out there this season. And shout out to Stammer in goal. Obviously, right now, any sort of award finalists are not decided, but if Stammer's not up there for goaltender of the season, there is something wrong in terms of the selection process. Mustakalta finishing in 3rd, missing out on a perfect PK as well at the end of the season. They dropped down from that 2 seed, but still a top 3 finish. Very, very strong for them. What a season it was for Aro. 40 goals, 69 points. Alupakas up there as well. Launanen, the front 3, all with the least 54 points. Both defensemen over 30 points. And Latve as well. Somebody else we're going to be talking about, I'm sure, quite a bit when it comes to award conversations towards our final. Voitimatone held down that 4th position, maybe a little bit more, further back than some people expected them to be, but 17 wins on the season. Undefeated? Well, not quite, but it was still a very strong season for the likes of Eki, Tempinen, and of course Potzloff in his return to the team on 44 points. In terms of the goaltending, strong numbers from Zande and Hanselinho, but obviously we have seen that they only finished in 4th. Strong goaltending and some good point totals wasn't enough to lock down one of those top positions. A big shout out to Mythics, who found themselves in 5th place, up 3 spots from the last week and up 5 spots in total over the last 2 weeks. What a charge to find themselves in the postseason. While the Blackjacks moved up into 6th position, and Exon up by 3 points, or 3 spots, I should say, from 10th to finish 7th. They avoid the fewest goals for in the league and avoid disaster as well. A team viewed as many, or by many, as top 4 worthy. They instead will have themselves a tall task in the first round. And Goons avoid disaster. They were down 3 spots, but hold on to our final playoff spot. In 8th place, they are postseason bound. Now, obviously, I'd love to take a look at every single one of these teams in regards to stats, but again, we have a lot to cover, not only in Elite, but further on as well. We'll talk about the top 8 again momentarily. Let's mention the Polsky boys, down 3 spots this week, or through the final week of the season, and down 4 spots in total over the final 2 weeks. They, might feel a little bit disappointed that they weren't able to lock down a playoff spot, because they very much had it within their grasp and it slipped through their fingers. But they are confirmed back into Elite next season, as are Tiki Talk, up 1 more spot to secure 10th. They moved up 4 positions over the last 2 weeks of the season to lock down one of those safety positions. Vesapampa, very up and down season for them, but up 3 spots over the last week of the season. They are safe heading in to our spring campaign. And then Hamo, down 3 positions over the last week. They were on the cusp of the playoffs, won't be able to make it on pace, but again, have safety for next season. While the next 3, Roots Gaming, Renascore, and the Fallon Coal Miners, will find themselves battling for safety with a Pro Division club. For Roots, found themselves, Renascore as well, in one of these positions for the vast majority of the season. But what a disappointment it was for the Fallon Coal Miners, who were in free fall over the last couple of weeks of the season and simply could not maintain a hot start. And of course, Unwanted are automatically relegated club with the DNF on the season. But you look here at some of these markers, and again, for Parasite, the points per game, just 1 loss on the season, absolutely outrageous. And of course, bolstered by the top goals for, look at the separation they had between second place Mustakalta at a 5.32. Absolutely insane. Of course, on the other side of that, you have Renascore, the only team under a 2. Look at Mythics and Exon, both playoff teams, but at a 2.32. That'll be a concern for both of those clubs heading into the postseason. Well, in terms of the goaltending and the goals against, it was Parasite, top defense out there, only team under a 2.0 goals against average in the league so far this season. Whereas, well, on the other side, no surprise, and outside of Goons, no team that made the playoffs, or, none of the teams here in the mix made the playoffs except for Goons, at a 3 goals against per game. And obviously, that number could look worse, given that they've drawn Parasite in the first round. Top power play in the league, Parasite, of course, nearly at 46%. Goons on 9% as well, the lowest power play in the league before playing Parasite here in the postseason. Totarit finishes with the worst penalty kill at 62.5%. They will have to clean that up. They are taking on Exon, and again, Exon will have a lot to prove in the playoffs, while Polsky boys had the top PK, but could not get that to translate to the playoffs. Meanwhile, of course, Parasite very much up there as well. Worth noting for Parasite here, too. And again, this is just to showcase the dominance, fewest amount of penalties in the league as well. They do not give up penalty killing opportunities. Whereas, hey, for Exon, for Totarit, that is, of course, a preview of the first round matchup right there. That series very well could come down to who stays out of the box, given that they were the top 2 teams in terms of penalties. For the face-offs, Renascore at the bottom, but Mythics, Exon, both there around 46, if not 47%. They need to clean that up, of course. Top face-off percentage heading into the playoffs is Voitomaton. A decent sign for them as they try to kind of shine through and live up to the expectations of, hey, this is a team that should be able to make it into a championship situation, of course. The Blackjacks, least physical team in the league. We'll see, of course, if the playoffs provide anything different. Meanwhile, Goons, of course, led up to their namesake. But I mentioned that we were going to take a look here at some of the stats, and indeed we will if I can get the page to load. There we go. So, for your skaters, of course, we got to go regular season. It was Vatu leading the way in points on 104. Nikki Dangles, Benito, party time for Tiki Talk. Tremendous season there. And Aro in the top 5. Temu, number 6 as a defenseman, is ridiculous. Was tied in points with Eki. You had Profilipaki, Alopekas, and Tamex also up there for Tiki Talk at 54 points. Top goal scorer, of course, was Vatu, and look at the separation. 25 more goals than Aro. Nikki Dangles in third, party time. Then Tunkelia for Polsky boys. Again, for Polsky boys, it's going to feel like they left a little bit on the table. It's got to be a bit of a disappointment to have not made the playoffs. Good season, of course, for Sokolo. Koloslov and for Sokolov, being up there for another non-playoff team, let alone a team finding themselves in a relegation series position. And of course, there's so much more to look at here throughout the season. I like tracking, most PIMs and everything like that, the most checks, and as that goes. But again, so much to cover throughout all of these different leagues. So I'll keep it simple in regards to points. Amongst defenders, of course, Teemu was up there. Tombo, second in points amongst defenders. The separation these two had from everybody else was ridiculous. Pensas Mias up there, tied for third with Psycho Skills, who had a great return to the Elite Division, and of course is playoff bound with the Blackjacks. Sisu continuing to really improve, getting onto everybody's radar for the 1v1 side of things, but still being a very steady force back there for Goons this season on the blue line. Of course, Jamal the Man for Voitimaton, the Mustakalta duo of Mise and Nuari Jamal, Easy Sniper for Goons, and Kunkin Kierva up there on 28 points. And of course, for the goals, it's Teemu and his ability to jump into the play and make things happen. He certainly did make things happen for Parasite. And of course, last but not least, the goaltender, Stammer, locking down the most wins with 20 out of 28 games played. Every single game, of course, played by him. In terms of save percentage, though, Stammer led the way, 86%. Only Latve had above, at least in terms of the amount of games played. Actually, that's unfair to Circula, of course, up there at an 81, so the sort's a little bit weird for some reason. Not sure why. But Latve over 80% as a full-time starter. Nikkei and Finsere, of course, a part of a tandem. Circula, really good season. Rico, a really good season. And even Kazu's way down here on the sort. I'm not sure what's going on with the save percentage sort there. But for goalies, 4 shutouts leading the way. It was Latve for Mustakalta. So, as I mentioned, for the skaters, of course, there's always so much that we could take a look at for the other stats, even points and stuff like that. But again, I'll keep it simple because, of course, all this information is available to you all as well. And we still have our other tiers to talk about. But we also have the postseason to talk about. As mentioned, your 4 matchups in the quarterfinals for the Elite Division. Parasite taking on Goons. It would be one of the biggest upsets in ECL history if Goons are able to get it done. We'll see if the holiday break perhaps disrupt the momentum of Parasite. Time will tell. The battle of 2 versus 7. Certainly some upset potential for Exon. We have talked about it all season long, though. Can they live up to their expectations heading into the year? You knock off Totarit, you'll certainly be right back on track, but Totarit, a very strong team. You did not earn that 2 seed over the likes of the other playoff teams you see here without being an incredibly solid team and certainly a threat, although Parasite very much the favorite heading into this. Mustakalta and the Blackjacks. Can the Blackjacks finally get out of the first round? That'll be the question there. Again, Mustakalta, though, tall task, and certainly as that 3 seed, you could very well have that, the future matchup. Totarit, Parasite, unless there's an upset on one of those 2 sides. But you can only look at the team that's in front of you. Right now, it's the Blackjacks, who continue to have that staying power in the Elite Division, especially as a postseason level team. Voitimaton and Mythics. Mythics, again, going to be looking to pull off an upset. They did a great job in the back half of the season to move into a playoff spot. But Voitimaton, they have that experience. They know what it takes to get to the top of the mountain. Granted, it has been far too long. I'm sure every single member of that team will tell you, especially the ones that have been to the top of the mountain since Voitimaton's been there. We'll see if they're able to do so. Again, postseason kicks off on Monday, January 6th. Odds are you're watching this during our live broadcast. Hey, it's coming up shortly. But before that, we have some other leagues to talk about and some other things in general. As, of course, I need to talk about our partnership with Wellnet. Make sure to check this out if you haven't already. All the information that you need is on sportsgamer.gg. Of course, you may also have an email that you can search. Just search for Wellnet or SportsGamer, and odds are it is there. We send out mass emails when this was originally announced. But, of course, just a lot of different options in regards to just trying to make sure that all those hours spent in a chair don't add up in the more negative way. Again, there is a lot and pretty much anything that you might need to look for. I mean, a lot of options, certainly, but anything that you're looking for in regards to trying to be a little bit more active and not necessarily, again, being glued to the chair. Even the 3-minute healthy back workout that we have as an available option. Of course, you guys would have seen some of this before. Plenty of tracking options as well. You can also recommend, or I should say represent, your own team. And hey, if you have checked this out, recommend people other options. So again, make sure to check out SportsGamer and Wellnet. Again, you can do so with our lovely friends at Wellnet. Up next, let's talk about our second tier. It is the Pro Division. And we'll kick things off. The top of Group 1. Shout out to D-Lock, moving up 2 positions to claim that spot as Zenigame continue to hold on to second place in the group. Gotham Knights falling 2 spots down off of that top position, while Octusit moved up 1 position in the 4th. Blackbirds up by 1 into 5th. Nova slipping a little bit at the end, down 2 positions, while the Old Timers held 7th. And our final playoff team, SSK Esports, taking the spot away from Owned Exa and Vizio, for that matter, beating both of those clubs by just 1 point. Worth noting for Vizio there, good recovery overall. They were really slow out of the gates. To get safety is huge for them. And for the Serpents as well, moving up into 11th, 2 spots over the course of the final week, while you had a team like Devils down 3 positions. It's a good finish for the Serpents. Mites finishing in 13th, moving up 1 position in the final week, while Nordic Stars perilously close towards that drop zone. They moved down 2 positions. Well, at the bottom of the group, Deadly Phantoms just could not figure it out this season, and Kumanelta Klubele also further down, of course, finishing dead last in the group. So not the finish that those 2 clubs would have been looking for, but some decent stories being told throughout. And again, congrats to DLAC for winning group number 1. But group 2 perhaps holds the favorite heading into the postseason, as No Street Sports locked down that top spot as they held it all season long. Poggers moving up 1 position into 2nd over the final week, while HC Lugano Esports up 4 positions over the last week to claim 3rd. Very strong end to the season for them. Aspire dropping 2 spots, but still a 4th place finish, while Björklöven Esport move up 3 spots into 5th. Rutik down 2 positions, but find themselves in a playoff spot. Isman Valinta also down 1 position, while the Hervlev Eagles were up by 1 to secure the final playoff spot of the group. A really good end of the season as well for Finnish Roosters, moving up 1 spot into 9th. I mean, again, in terms of a good finish, I mean, you look at the last 10, but still it was a team where it's like, okay, where are they going to finish? And Sawalanch, definitely one of those teams where you ask, well, where are they going to finish? They dropped 6 positions over the last week, missing out on the postseason by 3 points, of course, as did the Finnish Roosters. So really rough end of the season for Sawalanch, while essentially everybody else from here held their positions over the previous week. Golden Sticks holding in 11th again. Then you get into, of course, some slippery slope territory with the Nuremberg Ice Tigers Esports Squad, Cheeky Grinders, and Red Bull Munich Esports, while Afterlife for the 3rd straight week found themselves in 15th, and Refused to Lose for the 3rd straight week found themselves in 16th. They certainly knew they were up against it. Again, a very late qualifier for this division. Getting a couple of wins, though, not a season to be embarrassed over. If you are them, I think they put up a good fight, and I think you could very well see them back in Pro. I'll just be intrigued to see if it's going to be through certain, transfers, or maybe if they try to keep the team together. Time will tell. But a look at the stats, of course, for the combined group, and of course we got to go over to the regular season. Shout out to Toivonen leading the way with 106 points, 38 goals, outscoring the Pro Division, or the Elite Division experience, I should say, of Yakari for Poggers with 47 goals. Tihizu up there for Aspire, also breaking the 90-point mark. You had Hisei for No Street Sports, Amigo Buna for Poggers, easy for me to say, rounding out the top 5 on a very solid 82 points. Adri up there for Exa, but again, they miss out on the postseason. Yipux and Yompe will be there for Aspire. Alpha Bordia will be in the playoffs for Bjerkleben. And then Rookie Liamovic, great season for Serpents. Again, they miss out on the playoffs, but 72 points in 30 games. Incredibly stellar season and a player to keep an eye out on. Somebody who, we'll see how long you're in Pro Division. Certainly, that goes for all of these guys, regardless of how the playoffs pan out. As I cannot get this to sort. There we go. Top goal scorer for the season was Hisei on 50. Of course, we mentioned Yakari, Adri, Tihizu, Aumio up there as well with 41. Imosi, same thing for Zenigame. And of course, we already mentioned the likes of Yipux and Alpha Boria, but Rimpe with 40 for the Gotham Knights, and Limbe up there for Rutik with 40 as well. When it comes to the defenders, top point getter was Atzes for No Street Sports, out-dueling King of Apes by just 1 point. And Lauren Javi also breaking the 50-point mark, finishing with 51. MCH up there as well. Yemu Tapu for No Streets. Borjan Dahlin for the Gotham Knights. Puta King, of course, who has Elite Division experience. Strong season there in regards to points. Plus minus not so much, but Red Bull Munich Esports, of course, missed out on the playoffs. Sage and Ansberg up there as well, rounding out the top 10. Top goal scorer, well, it was indeed King of Apes. So no surprise there, of course. Not only Elite Division experience, championship experience for King of Apes in the defensive spots. But let's talk about the goaltenders here. The winningest, Kusan for Gotham Knights, played all 30 games and won 20 of them. We mentioned him all season long. Samilandia up there for Poggers as well. Roysto for Otuksits. And of course, if we can get this to properly sort by save percentage here as well. I don't know what issue I am having with this. It might be a mouse issue. Easy for me to say. And looking, I think we have the proper save percentages here saved. So Ice Pirate up there for HC Lugano Esports, 84.81%, leading the way. Broken Rice there as well for SSK Esports, and strong for the Golden Sticks despite not making the playoffs. Pun fully intended. An incredibly strong season, and somebody again to keep an eye out on in this division moving forward, if not potentially further up. Sonny's profile up there as well for Refuse Toolers. That is astonishing. An 83% save percentage for the team that finished in dead last in the group. Absolutely outrageous numbers there with the 14 games played and a 7-7 record. That is just stellar. Of course, Kusam was up there as well. Snasigi, Keskitalo. Also, very, very strong season for, again, someone who I knew more as a skater from his time in the Elite Division. And then other names, of course, mentioned Roysto, UBXor, and Provocacia, both up there as well. I had mentioned them as the season went on. So in regards to that idea of like, man, how do you crown a goalie of the season? To be honest, I don't know. And I feel like that's one of those things that is kind of talked about as well at the Elite Division level. You have the star players that have done really, really well on the big time teams. But then what do you look at, right? Do you look at the guys who are maybe just on the outside looking in, like Party Time for Tiki Talk in the Elite Division? What do you do there? And then again, for Sonny on Refuse to Lose in goal with numbers like that, how much credit do you give him in regards to being one of the best players of the season? An interesting question, certainly. But for the moment, of course, we do have the playoffs to talk about for our Pro Division. D-Lock will take on the Hervlev Eagles, Zenigame and Isman Valinta, Gotham Knights and Rutik, and Otuksit taking on Bjerkleben Esports. On the other side, it is No Street Sports and SSK Esports, Poggers and the Old Timers, HC Lugano Esports against Nova, and Aspire versus Blackbirds. And unlike when I was talking about the Elite Division, man, the Pro Division, it feels wide open. You have a ton of these matchups where it feels like in any given day, any given series, you play that series 5, 10, 20 times, it could round out to being as close to 50-50 as it can be, at least in the case of 10 or 20 times, because you can't do 50-50 with 5. It's mathematics. It's not my strong suit. You would think it would be, because gigantic nerd. But that's not the case. But regardless, Pro Division, very fun to follow this season. I am very intrigued to see who is able to come away with the championship and automatic promotion up to Elite, because I feel like it is a toss-up in a lot of ways. Yes, you have your favorites, obviously the 1 seeds and D-Lock and No Street, chief among them, but that Pro division, again, feels wide open for anybody to be able to claim that top spot. Next up, it is our third tier, the Light division of the ECL, and let's take a look, before we get a look at the playoffs, at the final standings in the groups. Kicking things off in Group 1, Puck Over Glass maintain their top position yet again to win the group, as Mudu Hockey maintains second place for the third straight week. No movement for the next couple of teams as well, as Ace Squad held down third, Farmalagat in fourth, and HC Videlma in fifth, while Collicott Esports moved up 3 positions to claim a playoff spot. Strong end to their campaign. DEG Esports held down 7th position, while the German Ice Gladiators finished in 8th. They did fall 2 positions, but managed to maintain that playoff spot. Unfortunately, that does mean math-wise that, well, 2 teams were not able to maintain, or at least 1 team was not able to maintain their position, and that was Black Sharks, falling from 8th to 9th and missing out by 4 points. The Carless Icemen held down 10th, while Team Infernus dropped 1 position to 11th, and SSK Academy, for the 3rd straight week, maintained the bottom position in the group. For group number 2, Project X maintained that top spot over the final week of the season, winning the group by 9 points, while Ruti moved up 1 position into second on the tiebreaker over Tokoku, down into third. HC Pustertal Esports held their position in 4th, while Ice Baron Lauf Gaming moved into 5th, up 1 position, taking that spot from Vitos Vitia. 7th place, SCB Esports, able to maintain their spot, while Coup de Grace were the last team to sneak in, moving up 1 position, swapping spots with Kokai Esports, who miss out by just 1 point. A rough end to their season. It certainly looked like at times they were going to have a playoff spot locked down. Woodhands moved up 1 position into 10th, while Boomers dropped by 2. And that means, of course, Taisto holding their position in 12th, as did Isolone Rooster Esports holding their position in 13th. For group number 3, Sune Iko Esports holding down their top spot, as second place was maintained by Kurtamia Vastan, and Hopfen Smoothie HC also held third. And I'll spoil the rest of this group. It's the exact same standings order as it was in the prior week. There was no movement in the group. Macho HC finishing in 4th, Sete Licurho in 5th, the Senayoki Noms squad in 6th, Underrated in 7th, and Saucer Hockey in 8th. Meaning, of course, we had the Dara Stars, who had a really strong start to the season, but couldn't maintain it. They miss out by 1 point. And then the bottom 3, there was that fair amount of separation. Galimas Hockey Krefeld, for the 5th straight week, held 10th position. They were there all season long, while for the 3rd week in a row, it was the Moscow Capitals in 11th and Game Over Esports in 12th. So, yeah, again, rough for the Dara Stars, especially to miss out by 1 point. And then group number 4, Kikakiria, after 2 consecutive weeks in second place, they snag that top spot at the end of the season by 2 points over the likes of Six Sticks Misfits, down 1 position, and SSK Prospects, who held 3rd position yet again. Hockeyholics jumping up 2 spots into 4th in the final week of the season, while Vita dropped down 1 position into 5th, and including me, dropped down 2 spots into 6th. The VBO Stars hold down 7th position, while Technical Disaster take that final playoff spot at the last moment, moving up 1 position to claim it. Meaning, of course, that the Hurricanes just miss out by 3 points, but they did move up into 9th. Patahalala was the big loser, falling down into 10th, losing 3 positions in the final week of the season and missing out on the playoffs as a result. Calipo HC up 1 position into 11th, while Trojans fell down 1 spot to 12th. And Bellissimo, as they had all season long, they hold down 13th position, for all 5 weeks of the season. We'll take a look here at the league leaders as well. Regular season-wise, your point leader, Yusa Solo for Tokoku, 84 points, 51 goals. You had Visions up there for Hockey Holics on 80 points. Temu Underdog also up there. Yesi, Hyde, and Lamza. You had Konsuk, I believe. Antti, of course, up there. Another player with plenty of elite experience. Lotiseva and Nikki Tikitin. Fun fact, one of my wife's favorite names in the entirety of the ECL. She always laughs at me like, how do you say some of these names? Because I mean, from the Finnish perspective, hey, they are what they are. But then you have a goof like me trying to do the best I can with some of these names, and it's tough not to embarrass yourself, you know. But hey, I try. Top goal scorer, of course, Yimpa, 52 goals on the season. Yusa Solo also breaking the 50-goal mark. And then, of course, a lot of the familiar names that we mentioned, except for Tizon, who was up there on 42 goals. Bror as well. And then JF at the last moment in there for Macho at 39 goals. So certainly some players to keep an eye out on heading into the postseason. Defensively, though, your point leader, Nuzon, for Puck Over Glass, 43 points. Very strong total there in just 22 games. You had Helkvist up there as well, 39 points, getting some decent separation. Decutter is up there as well. Svana for Suni Iko. Vade. Kavenpapu was up there as well for Kikakirya. Not a name I had to mention all that much this season. Oliver up there. Datsuki we had mentioned quite a few times. Samadhi and Victor Hall, who was in the mix quite a bit this season in terms of notable players. Top goal scorer, though, Lemonzi was up there. 10 goals, same as Iron Fist, who had apparently just the 11 games played for Coup de Grace on the defensive side of things. And Akimka as well up there for the Moscow Capitals, who we had to mention a couple of times in terms of, again, the familiar names that we mentioned throughout the year. For the goaltenders, the winningest, it was a tie between Pelkinen and Temeti, 18 wins apiece. Of course, you also had the likes of Bobby Python, Ranta, Benjamin, who we had to mention quite a few times throughout the season as well. Not had to mention, but earned the mention, I should say. In terms of the save percentage, though, and again, sometimes this is just not cooperating with me, but hey, we're doing the best that we can. Obviously, I had a couple of guys up there who hadn't played that many games. And even here with Masamone and Lidman, 12 games played, certainly, a good portion of the season, half of the season, of course, as a part of Tandems. Very, very strong numbers there. But Temeti Flaruti, 24 games played and 86%. Very, very impressive. Aransi Poika up there as well for Pata Halala, missing out on the playoffs, but still a very strong save percentage at 85%. So, it raises the question when you talk about the playoffs for some of these teams that did not have that outright starter of, well, who is going to be that guy? And of course, when we talk about the playoffs for the light division here, there's a lot of matchups to go over at this point, as is the case when 32 teams make the playoffs. But I feel like this is pretty similar to Pro, right? I feel like you have a couple of teams that are certainly going to stand out a little bit more than others in terms of the likelihood to go all the way and win this light division crown. But there are also a lot of teams that are just in that mix. You have your favorites, but I don't put it past even one of the lower rated teams to be able to make that run based off of what we had seen out of their play at certain points this season. So, especially when a team like even Tokoku, not that it's a lower seed, but they're the 9th seed in this matchup, and they had a really strong season. Mudu Hockey is only the 5th seed. I mean, it shows the competitive level that we had in the light division for this season. And again, it's one of the reasons why I like tracking it all throughout. Obviously, again, when we have that much to talk about regular season and playoffs, as I mentioned throughout this show, I can't sit there and go over every single team's final stat line as much as I would like to. These tend to run almost an hour anyway, so I don't need to be here for 3, nor do I think you want me here for 3. But again, very excited to see what will happen in the light division. And hey, we still have more to talk about here, don't we? You know it, you love it. Tier 4, it is our core division of the ECL. Let's go through the groups, of course, before we talk about stats and the playoffs. Group 1, topped by Dynamo HC, holding their position for, I believe, the 4th week in a row. They got that separation and were unable to be caught, even by the likes of Hillian and Pico Kaupunki, who, again, I believe for the 4th week in a row, held down second position. You had Cape Town Kings holding on to 3rd, while Copy Booty moves up 1 position into 4th. Prowlers falling 1 position as a result. And then from there, the rest of the teams in this group held. Taskubilis in 6th, the Gilligang in 7th, and Raiders HC, your final playoff team from the group, in 8th. While Philippi Parit holds down 9th, Scrubs in 10th for the 5th straight week, and ERC, Ingolstadt, I should say, for the 5th straight week as well, finishing, of course, with a less than ideal record. But hey, full credit, because there are some teams that would get halfway through a season without a win and say, oh man, I don't know if I want to play this game sucks, or whatever. Full credit to the Ingolstadt lineup for finishing all 20 games. You have my respect there, certainly. Group number 2, 5th week in a row, Maitoyuna holding down the top position as they win the group by 9 points. Cost Wolves holding down 2nd position yet again, while Armian Curry move up 1 position into 3rd, and Nordic Nosebleed also moving up 1 position into 4th, which saw Nameless drop 2 spots down into 5th. From there, we get into that holding pattern again. Salasiora holding 6th position, HC Ohivero holding down 7th, and the Reckless Panthers in 8th. HC, let's go, missing out by 2 points. Nürnberg Niedhager missing out by 3 points. Yervan Lecki was in the mix as well, missing out on the playoffs by 4. And then Wildcats Esports, once again, holding down the last spot in the group with the, of course, 2 wins there, the 2 primary wins at least, in 22 games. Group number 3, 5th straight week, top of the board, Silver Sword Griffins winning the group by 9 points. Panic on Ice continued to maintain that 2nd place position, though. Tarun Gasalit holding down their position, as did Kella Goldcard HC and Paul Odyssey. HC Last Resort in 6th, while the Backcheck Boys once again in 7th. I believe it was the 3rd straight week for them. But a last-second change in the standings. What a push. Mieskisat up 1 position to take that final playoff spot over Rodis, who, in fairness, again, they were in the mix at a decent amount of times in this season. The Brunker Bulldogs and Krubad's Warriors rounding out that particular group. And for group number 4, Latinakat holding down their top position, while Tiki Taka not able well, technically it was a tie, so they technically dropped 1 spot. They were in first for the first 4 weeks, so to not win that group has to be a little bit rough for that team. It certainly seemed like they were going to be able to lock down that top position. Sopranos moving up 1 spot into 3rd, while Rusty X drop 1 spot into 4th. Carmadillos holding down the 5th spot, while Skyfall holding on to 6th. The Solution for the 3rd straight week find themselves in 7th. And again, we have a last-second change in the final week as EV Duisburg move up 1 position into the playoffs, knocking HC Ultin Esports out of the mix by just 2 points. Dampa HC and Vita Academy, well, they held down their final 2 spots as they had the previous week as well. In regards to some of the regular season numbers, you're a scoring champion on 78 points, more Elite Division experience, of course. Paninen getting the job done on 78, but look at some of these numbers there. Of course, you had the duo for Maitoyuna up there, both over 70. Moika on 71 as well. Incredible numbers, again, in just 20 games played. You had Free Skillers up there. Rami Finn for Maitoyuna rounding out that front 3. We mentioned Marul quite a bit for the Cost Wolves throughout the season. Hanu for Prowlers. Stu Rules, maybe one of my favorite names. And then Harton up there as well for Dynamo HC. Top goal scorer as well. Please cooperate. There we go. Was Hanu on 43, just ahead of Skillers on 42, and Ramifin on 40. You also had Toliki up there for HC Last Resort on 37, and of course Jimmy No Hands for Nameless on 36, with Le Magnifique as well for Ohiveto. And of course, Ponanen up there, Vide up there for the Gilly Gang, of course. When it comes to the defenders, your points leader, Toimite Tula, one of those names that always makes me second guess, and even then, probably not close enough. But 42 points on the season, just ahead of Kritiris of the Silver Sword Griffins. But a good battle between those two. Nikors was up there as well on 35. Yurka and Desautea rounding out that top 5. We mentioned Nitivirta quite a bit as the season went on as well for Tarun Gasalit. And of course, the goaltenders, last but not least, the winningest, had a few more games played than some of the competition, but Lazan for the Cost Wolves led the way with the wins. But it's the save percentages here that I'm always intrigued at looking at. And again, goals against average, certainly more of a team stat. Save percentage, it can be a little bit tough, right? Because if you're on a top team, you're probably not seeing too much of the puck. And when you are, it's because of a breakdown or maybe a fortunate bounce. So it's not the ultimate way to talk about, hey, here was the best goaltender, right? I mean, certainly too, you look over at some of these other numbers, you have some other methods, right? Certainly. But this is a glancery look, as this show has to be. And in terms of save percentage, of course, again, you had a few goaltenders that were up there with limited games played. Shout out to Callum. It certainly caught my eye earlier on in the season and finishes with a very, very strong total numbers, 14, 1-1. And again, the 87.55 save percentage. But Feki Nambo was up there as well for Maita Yuna. These might be the two top goaltenders to watch heading into the playoffs. Larde was up there for Hillian and Pico Kaupunki on an 86% as well. Of course, the Silver Sword Griffin starter up there on 85%. And that's the thing, right? Like, you see it in some of the other tiers. Again, top teams, maybe the goalies aren't necessarily up there for save percentages. That's not the case here. You are seeing top teams and their goaltenders being represented at the top of the board in save percentage. And I think that makes for a very, very interesting playoff scenario where, again, you don't doubt some of these teams as the lower seed being able to make something happen, right? I mean, especially when you talk about like Kella Gold Card versus Prowlers or Rusty X and Nameless, right? The closer the number is, the more of a toss-up it becomes. But even as you get into the mix of, and of course, we've already had some games played, Cost Wolves and Gilligang, a 2-1 split there. But I just wonder, odds are there's going to be a first round upset. What is the highest number in terms of a lower seed that can end up pulling off that upset? But then as we go on, if those top seeds are winning, I hate to say it, like I said, for the light division and pro for that matter, I feel like there is a really good competitive level to all of these tiers in the ECL, and right here in Core, no different. I'm very intrigued, and I don't think I could pick a winner here, right? Out of these groups, I mean, even the 4 group winners, Silver Sword Griffins technically got the top seed designation, and you saw it with the stats. The top players being represented, not just the skaters, but the goalies as well. A team like Panic on Ice being 6th. I mean, I don't put it past them to be able to win this. It's the best part of the playoffs, especially, when you have the parity that we do throughout these tiers. The most one-sided aspect of any sort of standings I think that we have seen so far in this episode of the Wraparound was the Elite Division with Parasite. Everywhere else, though, you had some close races, and even if, the top seed of a group won that group by 9 points or so, how did they compare to other group winners, and how is that going to play out if they end up meeting in the playoffs? We'll be following along as we go on, but we do still have one more group, one more division to talk about now, don't we? And that, of course, is our Neo division, our entry-level tier. Let's talk about these groups as Group 1, Brothers in Gaming, take the top by 2 points over the Worn Out Wise Men. Both of those teams holding their positions at the end or from the end of week 4 into week number 5, while Nordic Knights dropping down 1 position. They were technically in a tie with the worn out Wise Men. Hawks HC up 2 positions into 4th in the final week, while Ice Raptors and Seora Kunta both moving down 2 positions, but maintaining a playoff spot. However, it is worth noting here in terms of some things that have gone on. Dave Mihet, technically a playoff team. We'll talk more about that in a second. You had Nordic Falcons holding in 8th yet again. The Czechosvizera Ravens, easy for me to say, hold down 9th again. And Ice Huskies for the 3rd straight week at the bottom of the group. I mentioned Dave Mihet making the playoffs, and that is because we have to talk about group number 2. Salasiuru hold down the top position for the 3rd straight week, while the Vitapoya Vikings hold down 2nd for the 3rd straight week, and HC Left Academy hold down 3rd as well. However, you see the DNF next to their name. Due to, I believe it's 4 members of the team having to participate in their mandatory military service, they will not be participating in the postseason. And based on the math, Dave Mihet, on their 24 points, will indeed be participating. So a bit of a shame there for HC Left Academy, right? They're right there in the mix, 1 point behind Vitapoya and within 4 points of Salasiuru, but they will not be in the postseason this time out. Beastie Boys held their spot in 4th, Lassen Lampat in 5th, and the Hanover Indians esports squad in 6th. While Karit dropping down 1 position, they were in a tie, but were not able on tiebreaker to get ahead of Hanover, and Legion HC bringing up the rear in 8th. Brings us down to group number 3, the Typhon Veterans holding down their top spot yet again, Red Bull Munich Academy holding down 2nd, and Nordic Macabre, no movement there in 3rd. The Vicksburg Puck Rats, though, moving up 2 positions into 4th, while HC Total Chaos dropped by 1, and the Stockholm Vikings were able to make it past the Nordic Knights, taking that spot by 1 point to be a playoff team. Utalam Palaciora holding down 8th position, while the Red Falcons, once again, in 9th. For group number 4, HC Wolves holding down their spot. And it's another group with a lot of held positions. The Wolves in 1st, Clowns on Ice in 2nd, Flying Elbows, Mocha HC in 4th. We're in a tie with Wildcats Esports. They technically fall down to 5th. And then Twisted Clowns in 6th. And again, no movement here from the teams that missed out. Swiss Wolves Esports in 7th. You have Marshalls in 8th, Strength of the Pack for the 5th straight week in 9th, and Northern Lighters for the 3rd week in a row in 10th. And that brings us to our final group. Group number 5, Fallen Rangers holding on to that top position. A bit of a late charge from Valjaskunta HC, who move up 1 spot to 2nd, while Casanovat down by 1 position. Karhu Kisat in 4th position, holding it again. Boys are back, also holding down 5th. But the Ice Hockey Net Yetis taking that final playoff spot on tiebreaker over Sekotuli, both teams on 13 points. And of course, Valtakunan Viha Toimat down in last in 8th for the group. Of course, we'll talk about the playoffs here in a minute, but looking at those regular season stats, Fallen Rangers at the top of the board, Sebco and Zaki, we had to talk about them throughout the season as they just continued to put up the points, especially Sebco. Unbelievable. Vador up there as well for Brothers in Gaming. Honer, Messerine Jacques, Skeleton, Nikisuki, Sauron for Red Bull Munich Academy, Ranku, and Patty rounding out the scoring. And again, all these guys on 60-plus points. It's insane for such a limited season. And of course, for the goal scoring, it was Sebco. Messerine Jack up there as well on 49 points. Stowney up there for Casanova on 38 points. Rasta Nesta for Wildcats Esports with the 37. You had Andrew up there as well. Thunder Frosted for the Vicksburg Puck Rats. And Maximilian for the Worn Out Wise Men also at 31 goals at least. So again, heavy firepower to watch out for some of these teams in the playoffs. And the defensive side of things, well, that continues. We're going with the basics here for eBay on this one. 39 points, though, led all defensemen. Velium Polka or Poika, I should say, for Veljaskunta on 37 points. Maltsevi, his defensive partner, on 36 points. And, of course, Ranku and Method also up there. We mentioned Pred as well for the Fallen Rangers up there throughout the season as a consistent scoring threat, despite just the 7 games played, apparently. Not sure if that's a positional glitch with the website or not. It was Maltsevi and Free Swiss Elite, though. 10 goals each as defensemen, leading the way. So always nice to keep an eye on the defensemen. But when it comes to the goaltenders, Andy Jester, man. 14 games played, 89%, outrageous. Flusen with just the 6 games played, but very strong numbers. Samito, 16 games played for the Wisemen, over 88% on the season in terms of save percentage, and obviously it'll dip a little bit from there. So very similar story as you would expect to see. And in terms of the playoffs, of course, a couple of the matchups have already gotten underway at the time I'm recording this. HC Wolves have gotten the nod over Twisted Clowns, but we have already seen our first upset, Hanover Indians Esports over Red Bull Munich Academy in that German-based tilt. So I'm very intrigued, as I always am, to see what upsets might happen, but my interest is that much more piqued because we've already seen an upset out of any division. You know, talking about, hey, it's kind of wide open and numerous teams might be able to do well. We're already kind of seeing proof and evidence within our core tier that anything is possible beyond, of course, just, hey, the top teams are going to do well, right? No guarantees of that. But again, we'll continue to follow along with everything that we have going on here on the Wraparound, but that will do it for this particular edition. Again, make sure to join us at sportsgamer.gg to follow along with all the most up-to-date information as these playoff series continue. We're going to try to bring you as much action as we can on broadcast at twitch.tv/sportsgamergg. Obviously, we can only do so much, but we'll be covering the finals, of course. Elite Division, Pro Division, very much going to be in the spotlight as well. I want to thank all of you for joining me throughout the regular season. And, of course, we'll be continuing on throughout the playoffs over the next couple of weeks, all of it leading to our live final at Assembly in Helsinki at the end of February. Again, as always, sportsgamer.gg for all the information that you need. And we hope that you join us there for that attendable event. For now, again, one last time, thank you so much for joining me. Happy New Year to you all. And what do you say we continue on with the action here at SportsGamer?